Our team of passionate journalists, reporters, and documentary filmmakers work tirelessly to provide you with accurate, unbiased, and thought-provoking content. Program. Here at
For inviting me. The bio is already in the program, so why read it at all? And the fact that you have invited me must suggest that I qualify to address you. So let me say how glad I am to be present with you this morning. I've put together notes which will be availed to you, which speak in detail to the subject that you invited me to speak about. So what I'll do during this engagement is not to give you a typical keynote, but simply to, in an eclectic fashion, speak to some of the key issues that I think are relevant to an engagement such as this, and sensitive to the fact that your overall theme is about climate change. It is important to note what the world has been doing about climate change for a long time now. And those of you who are involved in the area of survey will remember that the world started worrying about the climate as early as 1972. And you will only have to read the agreement on the environment in Stockholm in 1972. After Stockholm, there have been a series of iconic meetings which have also spoken to the question of climate. You'll remember Rio 1992. You will remember Kyoto in 1997, which of course came into force in the year 2005. You'll remember Paris in 2015, 2016. And of course, you'll also remember the series of the Conference on Parties of the UN Framework Contract on, or rather Framework Convention on Climate Change, the last of which was held, I believe, early this year in Sharm el-Sheikh, and the 28th, which will be held in the United Arab Emirates in the month of November 2023. Within the African continent, we have also seen those developments. If you look at Africa Agenda 2063, which came into being in the year 2013, you will see that there is, in fact, an Africa framework on climate change and resilience strategy, which covers the year 2022 and will be in force up to the year 2032. And within the international arena, of course, we are aware of the Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which speaks to climate change. So that the whole question of climate is one that has been with us. I was listening to the Secretary General of the United Nations just a few days ago, and he was talking about the boiling world, that the world has now reached a boiling point. And you only have to see the temperatures which are very extreme. If you look at the floods, only yesterday, Beijing, China, had rain of nearly 1 meter. And if you look at what is happening in terms of the heat, Mongolia recorded its highest temperature since they started doing the records. And so that this is an issue that is alive and real. Of course, that is not to say that we do not have climate change skeptics, people who believe that really this is just fiction. But if you look at the El Nino in the world in the recent past, it tells you that something is happening to the world. And it is in that context, therefore, that we must talk about a resilient leadership. And when one talks about leadership at any level, one must recognize, particularly when one is talking about these issues in the context of Africa. Africa is a continent that has a very large desert, the desert area and the unraveling of the Sahara Desert. Those of you who are keen students of geography will note, for example, that the Lake Chad Basin, the Lake Chad contracted by almost over 30%. And you can imagine the impact that it has had on the Chad Basin, the fishing communities, And if you go down south in the Namib Desert, and if you look at quite a number of areas which have marginal lands, the world is really going through a very difficult phase. Which then calls into question, what are we doing at the level of leadership, at the level of research? If you look at Africa today, and you look at the kind of money that we deploy into research, is less than 0.25% of our budgets, not our GDP. And if you look at the world now, if you look at researchers per million, you'll be shocked at how pathetic we are. Israel leads the world, and I think to 1 million, Israel has nearly anything between 6,500 to 6,980 researchers per million. If you come to Africa, you come to countries, I think South Africa is leading in this regard, with about 500 researchers per million, Kenya possibly 250. Nigeria, which should be leading in this regard, is below 100.